nightmares? Hello, my successful and healthy earthlings. Mihaela Ragush here, naturopath and founder of the Natural Health Podcast. In this episode, you will learn just how to deal with these nightmares in a natural way. At the end of this episode, I'm also going to give you an opportunity to join a health and sex-oriented community, but join the Natural Health newsletter by clicking the link below. Welcome to the Natural Health Podcast, where we bring awareness to sustainable health in the business hustle space. Natural Health Podcast is perfect for the high-performing business-minded individuals who want to work with their biochemistry to achieve success and optimal health. It's Wednesday, which means it's time for What Would I Do? In today's episode of Natural Health Podcast, we discuss this week's question. All questions are kept confidential and I answer them as if it was me. The information provided is not be taken as advice and is solely for information purposes only. I'm not here to cure, treat, or provide medical advice. I'm here to educate and inform you so you're able to take steps towards optimal health. Please discuss any medical or lifestyle changes with your healthcare professional. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's get into today's question. All right, here it is. I keep having nightmares during the night and wake up in a sweat and very distressed. Is there anything I can do to reduce my nightmares? Wow, what an absolutely great question, because this is not really spoken about a lot. Because who do you go see, right? If you have a sore thumb, sore foot, you go see a doctor. But if you have nightmares, who do you go and see? There's no such thing as a sleep doctor. Well, there are sleep doctors out there, but the average individual will not go and see a doctor if they're having nightmares. They would just deal with it, I guess, right? But if it's becoming a recurrent thing, there is definitely things that can be done about it. Let's first have a look at what are nightmares, right? The definition of them is they're unpleasant or frightening dreams that cause emotional distress. So unlike night terrors, nightmares usually occur during REM sleep and don't involve physical or vocal behaviors, right? It is common to remember the details or feeling, that's an important one, not just the details, but the feeling of the nightmare, and some may even have recurring dreams. I know I've had a number of dreams in my life that occur and they come back. And it's like, wow, how does this come back? Sleep and dream is just absolutely extraordinary. I'm definitely going to have to do a bit more study into that and then provide that information to you. But medicine understands sleep as the body's way to recover and improve its physiological functions. And some psychologists believe that dreams are also a type of mental improvement or recovery, which makes perfect sense, right? We're sleeping so we can recover, and we're sleeping so we can actually improve. In many ways, nightmares can also be studied inside of these guidelines. They may represent our mind's failure to deal with certain information. This way, our mind connects to the unpleasant images as a method of identifying the problem. We know that people and information by principle of similarity and association, and our dreaming mind may use these same principles. You see, not everyone really knows what's happening, right? But from a medical and neurological viewpoint, nightmares can be linked to various factors that negatively influence our metabolic rhythm. This is interesting. So increasing our metabolism before bed can result in disturbing dreaming experiences, and various other changes of our sleep habit and our biological rhythms can have the same effect. So essentially, that's a little bit of a wrap up of what nightmares are, but let's get into some questions, right? Some questions that you can ask yourself, right? Here we have it. When did the nightmare start, right? Is it recurring? Is it always the same? Does it only happen in summer? Does it only happen in winter? Does it only happen when you sleep at someone else's house? Does it only happen when you're cold? Does it only happen when you're warm? Think about these things. Keep a sleep journal, a dream journal, a diary. Keep one of them and see if there's any link between that. Is there a reoccurring effect to them every time? So, for example, by recurrence, I mean every time you go to the ocean, you have those dreams. Every time you go see that auntie, you have those dreams. Every time you stay back at work, you have those dreams. Every financial year, you have those dreams. What's the recurrence there? Does it only occur when you're stressed? Is it actually interfering with your life? Is it interfering with your life? How do you feel after you have those nightmares? When is your last meal? How many hours between your last meal and your sleep do you usually leave or you've left when you had those nightmares? How's your coffee intake, your chocolate intake, anything with caffeine, some soft drinks have caffeine. What is that intake like? Do you exercise? Do you exercise before bed, after you wake up? Do you have any respiratory issues? Are you a mouth breather? Are you on any type of medications at the moment? Are you on any type of supplements at the moment? Do you have an illness or a disease? Do you use alcohol or drugs? What is your diet like? Are you actually sleep deprived before you get those nightmares? Does it happen when you have a viral infection? Because you said you're sweating, right? So you might actually have an immune system activation, and therefore that's what's happening. Is it in a certain sleeping position, a certain bed, a certain environment? When you think about these nightmares starting, did they start after a traumatic event? Are you withdrawing from drugs, withdrawing from anything like alcohol or any types of addictions? Are you in psychosis at that time? Do you have any neurodegenerative disorders, any brain injury? So after, like, for example, let's say you're playing footy and next thing you know, you have this nightmare that keeps coming up, anxiety and so forth. So many questions right there, right? Pause. So many questions to think about. And for you to even pause this episode right now, get a piece of paper out and answer those questions. Okay, what would I do? Okay, so I would do, if I was having nightmares that kept recurring, the first thing that I would do is I would regulate my sleep pattern. Wake up and go to sleep the same time every single day, night. I know it sounds crazy, but I would try and do that. Have a sleep hygiene, have pajamas, wear pajamas, brush my teeth. 15 minutes before bed, do exactly the same thing. So 15 minutes before bed, first, let's say you go brush your teeth, you have some water, do some breathing exercises, jump into your PJs, and you go to bed. Those 5 things get done always in the same row before you go to sleep. That's what I would do. I would remove any scary movies, video games, other exposures to violence or anything anxiety provoking like the media these days. But I do this anyway. I can't watch scary movies, so not me, because I know I would get nightmares. That's me, right? If you know you're like that, stay away from them. Consider counseling to understand the emotional trigger behind these nightmares. I would remove or reduce coffee and sugar and stimulants, also preservatives like just MSG, remove them. They can trigger nightmares. I would look into my zinc, my B6, magnesium, because they are used for brain chemical regulation. I'll make sure that they're on point. Absolutely amazing chamomile tea at night. I love chamomile. The constitutes of chamomile make my heart fuzzy. Chamomile is just absolutely amazing. I would also, if it interferes with your life, if it interfered with my life, I would see a professional. I would reduce my stress, anxiety, depression. I would remove drugs, alcohol. I would remove that food before bed and make sure there's 2 to 3 hours with no food. I deal with my emotions. That's what I would do. Yeah, that's what just came. Dealing with my emotions. Because if I don't deal with those emotions, they're going to be brought back up in my dreams for me to deal with it. Okay, I would also review my medications, my supplements, because I may be taking too many of certain supplements such as P6 and other things like that, which may aggravate nightmares or for me to remember them better. But at the end of the day, the main thing that I would need to do is deal with the issue and move through it. Deal with the issues that are maybe occurring in my life. Deal with those things that may be happening in my life at the moment that may be triggering those nightmares, especially if there was a traumatic event that occurred and then that's when my nightmares started going. It's absolutely key for me to deal with those feelings, those emotions before I can let go of that nightmare, right? So having a journal, a night journal, a diary journal, a dream journal, whatever you want to call it, but by my bedside table with a pen, and then popping down everything that's happened in the dream, and then maybe the day before, the week before, if anything stressful occurred. But you know what's best for you. This is just a little bit of a information to give you a bit of a like, ooh, trigger moment, plant those seeds next time you have that nightmare to be like, ooh, what's happening, right? But I hope that this did shed some light to your question. Anyone listening who may have this issue or a similar one. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me at mahela.raguz on Instagram, and I'll be in touch and hopefully be able to answer the question via the podcast. If you go onto my Instagram, there's a thing, ask a health question, click on that, fill in the form, and then hopefully it will be featured on the podcast. Bear with me. We have a few questions, a number of questions that individuals are asking, so it may take a bit to come onto the podcast, but I will try my best to get back to you as soon as possible. And if you want to be part of a health and success conscious society community, feel free to join the newsletter below by clicking the link, and you'll be sent a newsletter every Friday that's going to give you specials, information, new research, everything for you to have an optimal and healthy, successful life. And remember, the missing link between failure and success is your health. content and information provided here is opinion of Mahela Raguse and is for information purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. It is not intended to provide medical advice or take the place of medical advice or any current treatment you're undertaking. Consult your own medical professionals for any medical issues that you may be having. This entire disclaimer also applies to any guests or contributors to the Natural Health Podcast. It is advised that you consult your doctor or healthcare professional in relation to any health concerns you may be having. Mahela Raguse does not take responsibility for any health consequences which occur from a person listening, viewing, or reading this content. Under no circumstances shall the Natural Health Podcast, Mahela Raguse, any guests or contributors to the Natural Health Podcast, or any employees, associates, or affiliates of Mahela Raguse be responsible for damages arising from the information provided on the Natural Health Podcast. By listening to this podcast, you agree not to use this podcast as medical advice to treat any medical conditions in either yourself or others. Please note, if you're taking prescription, do not stop your medication or start a new protocol, including but not limited to supplements, diet, lifestyle changes without consulting a doctor or healthcare professional. If you or any person has a medical concern, you should consult with your healthcare provider or seek other professional medical advice. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something that you have read or heard on the Natural Health Podcast or in any linked materials. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or emergency services immediately. Neither Mahela Raguse nor the publisher of this content takes responsibility for the possible health consequences of any person or persons reading or listening or following the information in the educational content.